What if the more capable you became, the more invisible your need for support got? When was the last time someone checked on you? Not your business, not your output, you, without you having to ask first. If the answer surprised you, stay with me. Today, we're going to talk about the quiet math of success and why it isolates more than it connects. Here's the quiet math nobody tells you about success. The more competent you look, the less people think you need anyone. Competence signals safety, and safety to most people reads as doesn't need help. So the offer stops coming. And asking starts to feel like undoing your own credibility. If you're the one everyone leans on, the strong friend, the go-to advisor, the one who holds the room together, that role has no built-in space for your own needs. There's no reciprocal seat at the table. You're always the one holding it, never the one being held. In your closest relationships, who holds space for you? Not just for what you can offer them. I want to talk about when my father died. And my mother, actually, because those were two places where I felt the most alone. When my mother died, I thought I had people around me that could handle this and that they would actually participate, be there to support me, that type of thing. And that's not what happened. And I remember I was in a really dark place at one point, and I had a woman called me, and she's like, "How you doing?" You know, she was all happy. She didn't realize my mother had died because my mother had just passed away like a day or two ago. And I told her, and I could feel the depth of silence on the other end. She did not have the capacity to help me. She never even dealt with the death of her father or her sister. So how was she going to help me? But she was kind and she listened. She didn't say anything. And I said, I'm okay. And I said that to get her off, give her a way out the door because I knew she needed it. So I gave her the way out the door. And I never heard from her again. And I knew I wouldn't. The next person who called me, we were talking, and I had been there when her partner had passed. Well, after she passed, she was still grieving. It was within a year or something. And I remember being there, holding space for her, letting her talk, letting her do the grieving thing. When I was in that space, I remember I was telling her something, and it was really so gut-wrenching at that moment in time. And she's like, "Hold on, I got to get this call." And she hung up. And I just sat there and I was like, we're done. Because the woman didn't need the money. It's just a game that she played because she always thought that every phone call was so much more important than what she was doing at the moment. And if she thought it was going to be money, it was even more important than it was to be talking to somebody in pain. She called back and I did not answer the phone. I never heard from her again and I never called. But she did know because there was one woman who was a friend of both of ours. And I had told her about it. And she said, well, I called her back. She said, that wasn't the point. The point is that you hung up. That you chasing money was more important than somebody who was in need. And that was the end of that. And I remember there were only two people at the time of my mother's death that I really could count on. Well, there were probably three. But my mom, Sal was one of them. He just listened. He didn't say anything. He just listened to me just cry and say whatever I needed to say, because there was so much stuff going on inside of me. I didn't know how to deal with it. And then the other person that was in Chicago, the only thing she asked me was, what are you grateful for? And I talk about that a lot, because that was what got me out, that she knew enough to just say, what are you grateful for? To help me to get out of the place that I was in, because I didn't know how to get out of where I was. I had never had grief like that. And when it's your mother, it's a very, very, very challenging and unique experience. And thank God we only have one mother, because I couldn't do it a second time. And that was the path that started me on the journey home. When my father died, everybody's like, how you doing? And all I could say is it's complicated, because it was complicated. There were so many emotions inside my body. I couldn't even sift through what was coming up at that point. It was just so much. There was layers upon layers upon layers, and lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes is all I could feel. And I just didn't know how to navigate. So I just kept doing my best. But people kept asking, because at that point I was starting to let people in a little more. And I remember the one day I was on a call, and it was a mastermind type of call, and nobody was in the room except for two people. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to be good. Because I knew all the attention was going to be on me. I just knew it, and I didn't want it on me. But it was what Spirit wanted and what I needed to hear that day. And I got to talk about what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, how I was working through navigating the complicated issues. And the gentleman that was on the call, he said, Kath, you've already got spirits on your side, and they're just there helping you. So it was almost like he helped me to remind me that I really wasn't alone. I am very connected. Spirit is there. They're holding me in love. They're supporting me. And it was just how I had to navigate through the grieving process. And the woman that was on the call, I think she was more surprised, first of all, that I was as open as I was, and I was crying, and I am not one to do that. I mean, I barely knew these people enough to even do that, but there was a safety that I felt to allow them in. And there was an understanding that they knew of me, to know that the connection that I had was very strong. And I just needed to remind that. But see, when you're grieving, it's not always about a spiritual connection. Yes, they're there. Yes, they support you. Yes, they do all of that. But sometimes you need that physical connection. You need to know that somebody actually cares enough about you, and they're helping you, and they're holding you up when you can't hold yourself up. And I think that was one of the biggest things that changed for me, was when I experienced that, is when things started to fall into place. Like I was starting to see what the top emotion was that I was navigating. Because when you're in a field, when you're in water and you see all this stuff, and water is your emotions, and you're seeing all these emotions, but you can't identify them yet because there's so many. And I just remember thinking, I'm getting through this. I'm handling it. I lost, the network went belly up for the podcast. And I couldn't cope. It was like, that's when I flattened. That's when I actually faced the emotions that I was facing. And I remember just navigating through it and talking to people. But instead of it being the focus on me, it was like, I'm not sure what to do with the show. I don't know where to go with it. I don't know, because I didn't know. I really, truly didn't know. And people were there. They knew what I was navigating, but it was like, but what is it that you really want? What does the show mean to you? So again, switch your consciousness, switch what you're thinking, get out of what is it that's really important. And when I did that, I was able to start moving through again, because the show didn't air for 3 weeks because I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what programs to use. I didn't know anything. And I had to just understand where I was at that place. And when I did, I could start seeing what was happening because I was in a very, very, very dark place. I was in that suicidal place again because I was. I know my mother was suicidal. I know my father was. And I think when they died, that's why it hit me, because I've been suicidal. But I worked through all this, and here I am all of a sudden. It's like, I don't know where this is coming from because I don't feel that way. But it's what happened. And so as a result of all of that, I was able to start navigating through this. And I started getting back on the show. And I started like learning new things. As hard as it was, I was doing it. And then the anthology book came out, and this was my story of what happened to me with the relationship of my father, who died the day before the book went to publication. If there wasn't synchronicity in all of that. But what's even more interesting about this, that my father's been dead for a year and 4 months now. And what I have grown and done and experienced in my life since that. You know, that's why I talk about the burnout. That's why I'm talking about the nervous system, because I had no idea how much all of that impacted me and my nervous system, and understanding what true healing is. Because we think we heal up here in our brains, but we don't. We heal in our heart. We have to release the pain and the suffering that's in our bodies, because we all have it and we all stuff it. And when I look at what this past year has been for me, it's almost overwhelming, the degree of what I have lived through and survived in my life, because I had no idea. I really, truly had no idea. All I know is that my anger kept me alive. I kept moving forward, and I had a mission. And that was all I knew. I didn't know what the mission was, but by golly, I was going to find it before I died. And it explains so much of my behavior. And so yesterday, I had to take my cat into the vet, and he had a urinary block going. Now, I know what this is. I know how life-threatening this is. And, you know, and I'm just in there, and everything the vet said, I knew what he was talking about because I had gone through it with Felix. Felix was worse, though. And I understood, and we were doing this, and I was on the phone a lot with Sal going through this and talking to him and sharing this with him. And there were tears, because I said, we don't have this kind of money, and no animal is worth that, because both of us have spent tens of thousands of dollars to save cats, and they still died within a year or less. And I just said, we can't do this. I can't do it. I don't have the money to do it. He didn't have the money. So we made decisions. And the first thing we decided to do was get the cat out of critical state. Brought him home last night. He ate. He's going to the bathroom. He's still a little wiggy. He certainly doesn't trust me and like me very much right now. He went back to the vet. Everything's fine. We've got 7 days before we know if he's really out of the hot water. But I called an emergency room hospital, and they said it's going to cost $5,000 to $6,000. And I said, Sal, we're going to put him down if that's what it comes down to. Now, Marco's only, 2 years old, so he's a fighter, and he is fighting back. And I understand that Shadow is the one who's causing it and being a bully. But the whole point is that I didn't collapse like I did in May when the water heater broke. Now, it doesn't mean my brain is functioning 100%, because I still went down, but it wasn't like normal. Like, I could still function. I could still do things. I still was moving forward in my life as I am today. Very slow, but I'm doing it. And that is the part when you start healing your nervous system, when you allow whatever is in there to come out, to surface, to look at, to release, to love, to bless, to forgive, whatever it is. When you do that, your capacity grows, your strength grows, your peace grows, and you realize that it's just life. And yes, emotionally it can be hard, but it's not devastating anymore. And I think that was the biggest thing I realized yesterday with Marco is I wasn't devastated. Do I want to lose the cat? No. Because what was the thing I said? What is it with me finding animals and they're dying within 2 years of their life? And the only thing I could tell myself at that moment in time was at least they had the best life they could have in the short amount of time that they were here on this earth. And that's what I looked at. I also asked Ariel to help Marco. So the block was taken care of really quickly. So that was really cool. I mean, they expected it to be a lot worse. And by the time I picked him up, his urine was yellow and no longer blood. And they didn't expect that either. So I caught this in time and he's doing better. We're not out of the woods yet. But see, that was allowing people in. That was allowing me to change. That was my growth. It was a way for me to look back and say, I've done a lot of heavy duty hard work this year, in the last year, and it's not done, but my strength is more real. I'm not holding myself together and being angry or whatever. I'm actually like solid. And that's what true healing is you get solid inside of you. You know what you're capable of. You know what you need, and you're not afraid to ask for help. And if people sit there and want to think you're a failure or you have no capacity for whatever, or they want to judge you because you're having a breakdown or whatever it is, get rid of them. Because they're not friends. And they're not loving and they're not kind. Because in the world we're living in today, kindness, empathy, and compassion, as far as I'm concerned, is king. And we need to do that more for ourselves, because if we can do it for ourselves, we can do it for others. And that's what I want to share with you about the loneliness that I used to feel, because I didn't know who to talk to. And when I'm falling in my mind or I'm unclear about something, you know what I ask? Who can I talk to about this? Who can I call? And do you know I've got about 2 or 3 people that understand me, that love me, that accept me, and they've got my back. We hold each other up, and my mind expands because they see a perspective that I didn't see. And that is the gift. That is a true gift, because now I'm creating amazing connections with people that I admire and respect, and they have the same admiration and respect for me. And that is a beautiful thing, because it's changing a paradigm in my mind that nobody likes me, nobody cares, nobody loves me. That paradigm is dying a little bit more every single day, because I finally said, no, I don't believe what you say anymore. So I hope you found some value in this, and I hope you can relate to it a little bit. And that's okay if you can't, but it is something to think about, because we all need to heal, and we all need to know we're loved, and we all need to know that that we matter to people, and that our lives matter, that what we're going through, that somebody's there to help us, hold us up when we need it. So what I'd like you to do is to draw 2 circles on a piece of paper, one inside the other. In the outer circle, list the people who you lean on, or who lean on you, I'm sorry. And in the inner circle, list the people you actually let see you struggle. Look at the gap between the two. That gap is the size of your loneliness, not the size of your circle. Pick one person from the outer circle, and this week, I want you to let them in a little bit more. And if you're able, close your eyes. And if not, just follow my voice. Place your hand on your heart And bring to mind one person you could tell one true thing to this week. Not the whole story, just one true thing. And say to yourself quietly, I am allowed to need someone. Needing is not the opposite of strength. Take a deep breath in and let it all the way out. And when you're ready, open your eyes. This is week 3 of Why Everything Feels Empty. Next week, we close the series, How to Reconnect with Yourself Again. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And share this with the strong woman in your life who could use the reminder that needing help isn't weakness. If this episode felt like your Tuesday, I made something free. It's called the permission slip. 5 minutes, no cost. Just go to school.com, I am the light sanctuary, /about. I'm Kathleen Flanagan, and you don't have to carry this alone.